Tonight on CFTK-TV News, Day 2 of a high-profile murder trial is taking place. The current cost of living is rendering seniors homeless, and someone started an online campaign trying to get a new BC United leader.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cal Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond for today. To begin is some more advice coming from the Terrace Fire Department's head on how best to conduct oneself during the time of year where fires pop up quite often.
The wildfire season is pretty much fully underway now in BC, and considering how dire things got during last year's season all throughout the country and especially in BC, it's more important than ever that local residents take steps to prevent such fires because, as Terrace Fire Chief Chad Cooper illustrates, conditions favorable for fires sparking can appear quickly.
I just want to urge residents to use caution. It doesn't take long for the forest to dry out. We get another hot spell, hot and dry, no rain. It doesn't take long for that fire danger to creep up medium high. And then we also got to think about BC wildfire resources. If they're tasked out somewhere else in the province and we have a fire vent here, it makes it hard to get those provincial resources in because they're taxed with other regions with increased wildfire danger.
Locally, several spots in northern BC have been getting rainy and cloudy conditions as of late, but as mentioned before, humidity can dry out things like plants and trees and make them more flammable, although the heat of the sun isn't the only natural factor at play for a potential blaze.
Another aspect is those warm, high-pressure winds. So if we do have a fire vent, it usually gets fanned and it spreads quite quickly throughout the forest. So we just want to urge residents that if they're in the backcountry, they're being fire smart and looking out for any ignition sources.
Some suggested fire prevention precautions around the house include removing dead trees and branches, properly maintaining your lawn, plus avoiding placing firewood or your barbecue up against your property. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cal Maslin.
Nuisance and unsightly conditions were the reasons cited as why 2 properties on Lizelle Avenue have been ordered to be torn down in Terrace. CFTK-TV's Jaylene Matthews has more on the subject.
2 dilapidated structures have been ordered by the City of Terrace to be demolished by their owner within 30 days, or else the city will do it themselves and send the bill. That's what was decided at Council Monday night for the properties on 4507 and 4509 Lizelle Avenue. City Development Services Director David Block described the property's condition.
Most recently, with some activity on the site involving the RCMP. This building, not directly involved, had a fire. The building is damaged extensively. We have reports from our building official and from our fire chief attesting to the condition of the structure and the hazardous nature of it, particularly from potential fire hazard. The small fire was put out in March, but it did impact the adjacent new apartment building being constructed beside this site.
Adjacent property owners had expressed concern about activity around the properties. Block says the owner is aware of the situation.
I've spoken with the owner. This building, she does acknowledge, is damaged beyond repair. The interactions with staff, city staff, RCMP, as well as bylaw, have been lengthy. They've been dealing with the activities on the site and the property, also our building officials.
Other properties on the same block are not currently on the demolition list, but Block said city officials are working on the details to potentially bring orders to those as well. For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Earlier this week, the Terrace RCMP got a call about a passenger being disruptive on a WestJet flight that led to the plane needing to make an emergency landing at the Terrace Northwest Regional Airport. Officers then went to the airport's runway and were told that the passenger in question wouldn't stay in his seat during the takeoff, tried opening the exits, and reportedly showed other signs of paranoia, which was likely due to the illegal substance the passenger admitted to consuming before the plane departed. Other passengers were able to restrain the disruptor until police were able to come and apprehend him without anyone getting hurt. The officers believed that the passenger was having some kind of mental health episode and later took him to a hospital to get evaluated. Coming up next, a recent Israeli airstrike is attracting lots of criticism. Welcome back. There is growing international condemnation of an Israeli airstrike last weekend that killed more than 40 people at a tent camp in Rafah where Palestinian families were sheltering. Israel says the strike killed 2 Hamas leaders and promises an investigation into their deaths. NBC's Alice Barr reports.
Israeli tanks pushing into the center of Rafah, according to an NBC News crew on the ground, raising urgent questions over whether Israel has crossed President Biden's red line, warning against a full-scale assault on the densely populated southern Gaza city.
We have not seen them smash into Rafah. We have not seen them go in with large units, large numbers of troops. We're going to watch this hour by hour.
The Biden administration responding as horrific images from a weekend airstrike at a Rafah tent camp for displaced families trigger fresh outrage.
It's horrific, it's heartbreaking, and it needs to stop. We also have to remember that we are supporting Israel in their fight against Hamas.
Israel says it targeted and killed 2 Hamas commanders, but in the process, an Israeli official tells NBC News it appears an IDF bomb ignited a gas tank, sending flames sweeping through the camp, killing at least 45 people, many of them women and children, according to the emergency services in Hamas-run Gaza, and injuring hundreds more. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promising an investigation into what he initially called a tragic mishap.
We will be watching those results closely, and we will continue to emphasize to Israel their obligation to comply fully with international humanitarian law.
At the same time, the U.S. military forced to suspend aid deliveries by sea into Gaza because a temporary pier was damaged in bad weather. Another blow in Gaza's dire humanitarian crisis. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
There are questions about who's behind an online campaign to oust BC United leader Kevin Falcon. The post emerged this week, and the people behind the website say they are United Party members frustrated with Falcon's leadership with just months to go before a provincial election. CTV's Rob Buffum has the story.
BC United leader Kevin Falcon's party has dropped dramatically in opinion polls. Days after efforts to broker a deal with the BC Conservatives fell apart, he's now the target of an anonymous online campaign calling for him to resign as leader.
Not the kind of situation that Kevin Falcon wants to see right now.
The group behind the website also posted online to a few dozen followers on X, declined an interview request, telling CTV in a statement, "We represent several members of the party who were both active in the BC Liberal days and after the name change. All of us are members, some of us were staffers, but none of our group represents any elected official." It goes on to say, "We are anonymous because we fear the kind of retribution that could come to us from Kevin and his team."
If this is actually coming from the BC United Party, there's voices that Kevin Falcon isn't listening to, and they've decided to take their case to the public.
Falcon's party issued a statement noting BC United does not respond to inquiries resulting from anonymous social media accounts or websites. There is no evidence it is run by any former members of BC United and is more likely an underhanded scheme from John Rustad's BC Conservatives after he torpedoed negotiations last week. Rustad's office told CTV it had no idea who made the website. Meanwhile, pundits say Falcon needs to do something big to turn his party's fortunes around.
He needs to throw his Hail Mary pass now. Put out that big idea that gets everyone talking about his policy.
Calls for other leaders to resign have succeeded, notably Carol James and Gordon Campbell. One of the major differences, those calling for heads weren't anonymous.
Those were people who stood up and face to face to their leader and said, "You got to go." Hard to imagine Martin Luther King campaigning for civil rights anonymously. No, you stand up, make your point.
For now, it remains uncertain who's behind this website, if they're even with Falcon's party, but it's a message no leader wants to hear, especially 4 months before an election.
A DNA expert crucial to the Crown's case took the stand in day 2 of the trial of a Langley man accused of killing his wife and dismembering her body. CTV's Penny Daflos was in the new Westminster courtroom and a warning that some of the details upcoming are disturbing.
Whereas the first day of this trial provided a big picture overview and a surprising amount of gruesome detail that was agreed to by both sides, the second day of the manslaughter trial for Agnes Regis was highly technical, without a word from his defense counsel. A DNA and forensics expert from BCIT continued his testimony, explaining how he carried out sophisticated tests of female bone and tissue from a radial saw and knives, with the exceptionally high likelihood they all came from the same woman. IHIT investigators spent days at the home of Naomi Onatera looking for forensic evidence. There'd been widespread searches for the mother in Langley before her husband Regis was charged. Madam Justice Martha Devlin is hearing the case without a jury and asked follow-up questions during the highly technical testimony. Regis has pleaded not guilty to manslaughter and indignity to human remains, even though his lawyers agreed with Crown's statement of facts on day 1, which included details about how Regis had his wife's bones in tiny pieces in a backpack, which he scattered into the Fraser River with their daughter by his side. An RCMP sergeant also took the stand, testifying about testing various stains in the house for human blood. RCMP Sergeant Heather Burwell personally dismantled that radial saw and found those pieces of human tissue inside. Throughout her testimony and the BCIT expert, the defense did not interject or ask any of their own questions. It's still not clear if Regis himself will take the stand in his own defense. Penny Daflos, CTV News, New Westminster.
Turning to tonight's weather, the North Coast will get to see periods of rain at a low at 7 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will see a few showers of their own at a low of 5 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District is said to be partly cloudy and deal with a low at -1 degree. On the North Coast, the next week or so will be all clouds and rain, plus the high will bounce between 11 and 12 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will also basically just get clouds and rain too, while the high goes from 10 to 14 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, their upcoming week is set to see a few more flashes of sun, but still its fair share of rain and clouds too, while the high shifts from 14 to 17 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is utility work, bridge maintenance, road sweeping, construction work, roadside brushing and paving operations. Highway 35 has shoulder maintenance. Highway 37 has some road sweeping and frost heaves. 37A has bridge maintenance and road maintenance work, some more road maintenance work on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has both muddy sections and frost heaves still. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, a Richmond drug consumption site has led to heated debates. Welcome back. New controversy over the plan for a drug consumption site in Richmond, and the proposal sparked heated protests across at City Hall. There were also some emails that revealed that the Premier's office got directly involved in the polarizing issue. CTV's Ben Milger has reaction to the meddling.
The heated issue pitted Richmond residents against each other. In February, Council voted 7-2 to direct staff to work with Vancouver Coastal Health to explore the feasibility of creating a supervised drug consumption site at Richmond Hospital.
We were going through a due process. We were going through the science. We were going by what the experts were saying.
But one day later, without liaising with city staff, Vancouver Coastal Health shot the idea down. Emails obtained by CTV News showed the Premier's office played a role in crafting the message, even before the vote. Mental Health and Addictions Ministry staffer Preet Grewal wrote to communications staff at VCH. As discussed earlier this morning via text, the Premier's office has directed us to direct VCH to issue a statement to quell some of the misinformation surrounding the proposed Richmond supervised consumption site. Below is the frame for the statement for you, your team's input. It almost exactly matches the statement VCH eventually sent to CTV News. We reached out to Premier David Eby's office with questions about why it felt it was necessary to interject itself into this issue between the City of Richmond and Vancouver Coastal Health before it had even been voted on by City Council. But we did not get a response.
Coastal Health was working hand in glove with the City of Richmond to explore the idea. So they were getting their ducks in a row, ready to move on it. And then we have this interference from the Premier's office before the final vote.
With an election on the horizon, the opposition BC United accuses Eby of playing politics with a healthcare issue.
It's never appropriate for the Premier to stick their thumb on the scale of what medical professionals and others in that realm are trying to do.
As the debate rages on, first responders remain busy with calls for possible overdoses, even on the steps of City Hall. Ben Milger, CTV News, Richmond.
The high cost of living is impacting all ages, especially those on fixed incomes, and a recent study shows seniors who have never been homeless before are now relying on shelters more than ever. CTV's Rob Buffum has the story.
Bernie Lang is scavenging for jewelry to pawn. He's in his 60s and has lived in a homeless shelter for years.
It's different, that's one thing for sure. There's a lot of, lost people in there too, eh?
He's part of a troubling trend. A recent report published in the Canadian Medical Association journals documents the fact more seniors are becoming reliant on homeless shelters in Canada.
There are rising numbers across the country of older adults who are experiencing homelessness, and we know that it's rising out of proportion to what we would expect just from an aging demographic.
Staff at this Victoria shelter confirm they've seen a spike in seniors, attributed both to an aging population of homeless people and economic headwinds, inflation and a lack of affordable housing, forcing previously housed folks into the margins.
A significant increase in folks who had been living independently and had no experience with homelessness because of the cost of housing here.
What's more, shelters aren't adequately equipped for many seniors who end up there.
Are not set up well for folks who might have mobility issues or that kind of thing, so it can be really challenging for folks.
Affordability issues are also to blame for more seniors, including Peng Seelan Penny, depending on food banks. She's a retiree whose pensions aren't covering the costs of both housing and food.
Not a lot of housing for people that are on lower income.
The province says it's taking steps to increase affordable housing, including for seniors.
Part of the work we do around buying low-cost rental housing to make sure it stays in the nonprofit sector.
But there's no getting around the harsh reality. Tough times are facing a growing number of seniors, needing help with basics like food and shelter. Robert Buffum, CTV News, Victoria.
And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is down 33/10 of a cent. The price of gold is down $15.20. Oil is down 60 cents. Natural gas is down 10 cents. Aluminum is up $67.50. In Toronto, the TSX is down 367.07 points. The Venture Index is down 2.01. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 411.32, and NASDAQ is down 99.30. Still ahead, a messy no-show in Vancouver has sparked the creation of a petition. Welcome back. Hundreds of frustrated fans have signed a petition calling for tickets to be refunded after Lionel Messi didn't play the Vancouver Whitecaps on the weekend. CTV's Abigail Turner spoke with petition signers who want said compensation.
Chanting fans disappointed by one very important player not on the turf this past Saturday.
I was just upset. I was really upset. I was furious, to be honest.
Shiraz Dindar bought Whitecaps tickets for his son's 10th birthday when he found out Lionel Messi was expected to be playing against the team. But $350 later, the Vancouver Island family found out their son's hero would not be suiting up.
It is a lot of money, you know, and like, I think that I represent a common demographic in that it was our kids that really wanted to see Messi.
He's one of the hundreds who signed an online petition calling for reimbursement from the Whitecaps who increased ticket prices by hundreds of dollars.
Knowing Messi might or might not come, they chose to mark up their single game tickets like that. Take that $284. Remove the normal $40 cost of a regular game ticket. That is what they should get as a credit.
The club misled fans, reads one signature on the petition. I'm furious, reads another. More than 51,000 fans, an attendance record, showed up to the highly anticipated game.
It makes them seem like cheap and greedy.
The Whitecaps did not respond to the petition, but on Friday, the CEO said the news came as a surprise to the Whitecaps as well.
We really learned an hour, maybe 2 hours before we went out with our message.
The team says ticket holders will be offered a free ticket for a future regular season game, but for fans, including the Dindars,
he was really, really bummed out.
Traveling from Vancouver Island doesn't make that a likely option. Abigail Turner, CTV News, Vancouver.
That's all our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.